Hi there. Thank you so much for listening to Grounded in Maine today. My name is Amy. Today, my guest is Brenda Winkle, and you may or may not have heard of Brenda, but I met Brenda through a podcast group. And she has her own podcast. She also has her own business as an empowerment coach, which you are going to hear all about in just a little bit. So, Brenda, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Amy. I'm thrilled to be here.
Me too. So we're both part of the Mastering Your Podcast, the Podcaster Mindset group, and
Right.
I remember. So that's with Tiffany and David, and I joined. I think probably later, but there was a really cool challenge for us um, to listen to each other's podcasts and just get used to that, and to listen, to rate, review. And I remember the challenge was to really listen and give an honest review, like a really thorough review, not like, oh, I liked it, that was cool. And I was just thinking about it tonight that your podcast, which is Waves of Joy, was the first one that caught my eye. And I think it was about grief. I think, and which, that's me, whatever. But it caught my eye, and I listened to it, and I just felt instantly connected to you. And I loved that. I just love the way that you were talking, like you were talking. And I think I said in my review, like, I think you were talking to my soul. And
Hmm.
I just really connected with that. And so I would love for you to tell us about your podcast.
Oh, I'd love to. So, Waves of Joy is rooted in the idea that we can access joy in the ups and downs of our daily life. It's just a matter of what we're willing to see and what we're willing to kind of shift as far as our perception. What are we paying attention to?
Mm,
Often informs whether or not we can access joy. And there's this tendency in a lot of self-help kinds of corners of the world where there's almost this idea that we shouldn't have all the feelings, that we should only have the positive feelings. And I
yes.
call that toxic positivity. I'm not the one that coined that phrase. It was coined before me by someone else. But that toxic positivity is where we hot potato our feelings away. And I am of the belief and the mindset that we need to allow all of our feelings to exist and to experience them fully, and then make the shift towards feeling joy. And that by doing that and allowing our feelings to have space in the world and space in our experience, we allow them to be felt, and then they kind of dissipate, so that those feelings like grief, which you mentioned,
Mm.
get the space and the airtime that they really require. And then they kind of shift into something else. And if we don't give them space, they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And we internalize them. They come out in body systems, they come out in behaviors, they come out in lashing out against our loved ones, and they make us sick. And so by feeling them, which feels really scary to a lot of us,
Hmm.
by feeling them, it's really interesting. I have never fully felt an emotion, like really felt it, that didn't shift within about 90 seconds, including the deepest grief. Now, grief is like waves of the ocean, right? It's not a one and done kind of emotion. It ebbs and flows. And there are times when you feel that grief really acutely. And then there are times when it doesn't, you're aware that it's there, but it's not as much of a sting, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
Sure.
So when those moments come that you really feel it acutely, just feeling it usually only lasts 90 seconds, and then it shifts into something else. Maybe it shifts into sadness, or maybe it shifts into feeling contentedness, or then you can notice how your body feels. Maybe it feels cool or warm, or maybe you can notice muscle tension. It always changes. And so just giving yourself the grace to feel whatever it is and then shift to joy
Hmm.
is, for me, the key to unlocking sustainable joy.
Ooh, that was clever. I love
Thank you.
that.
It just came to me.
I love that, though. I mean, I think. and obviously it's so true, but we are so, I think society kind of tells us, generally, like, don't dwell on sadness. Like, we want happy. I worked with someone who was like, you gotta be more upbeat. And I was like, well, I need to, somebody just passed away or whatever. Like, I need to feel that. I can't fake happy because it's not where I'm at anyway. But like, also from feeling grief and, feeling things deeply, like, it also like builds this interesting desire. For me, it builds this desire to serve, like, from my experience, from my knowledge. Like, I really feel drawn toward people who are grieving, because I can understand that and I can empathize with them. I don't know if it's like personally because I wanna go back to that feeling because I was comfortable there, or if it's that I can really just empathize and, try to help someone else through. I'm not sure, but I've experienced a lot of grief in my life, and so I am drawn to that, I guess.
Do you feel like grief is where you're comfortable, or grief is where you're familiar?
I think it's probably familiar. I'm definitely not comfortable in grief. I mean, it's been several years, but over the last, my mom will be gone 7 years next month. So like over the last 7 years, I've lost, several people. And so
I'm sorry.
That's life, right?
Yeah.
But, it was like 1 year, one person, and 1 year, another person, and then my dog. And it just was like piling. And so I was kind of in that mode for a while. Obviously there were good times too, but I spent a good 3 years going to bereavement groups, just because I needed, because I think society is not comfortable with grieving and feeling like you were saying, we want to, the hot potato thing, like, you can feel it, but we don't want to see it. We don't want to hear about it. So I just had to go to a place where I could feel it.
That was so smart that you just found space holders for that grief. It was so smart.
Well,
I wish more people would do things like that and reach out when they need to, and find people to hold space if their community that they're usually tapped into isn't able to, because not everybody is able to hold space for big feelings.
Right. Yeah. I remember thinking in the bereavement group, because it was a small group, I was like, if so many people lose people, like, why are there not more people here? I had to start, I'm going to have to edit this out. I had to start because I couldn't function. Like, I wasn't able to function. I literally went to the doctor. I'm like, I think I think I'm having chest pains. And it was just grief expressing
a broken
itself.
heart. Yeah. I don't think you have to edit that out, because you can if you want, of course. It's your podcast. You can do whatever you want, but your experience is so common. And in my work as an energy healer, I can visualize a broken heart in somebody. I can see it in multiple pieces. And so obviously it's not the heart that pumps the blood through our body that's broken. It's our spiritual heart. It's our spiritual center that just gets hurt when we love and when we lose. And so I love that you shared that. Thank you.
I love that I can. Anyway, so we were talking about your podcast, Waves of Joy. And I also, you were telling me that you wanted to share about your sustainable practices, which I thought was so fantastic. I love when people say, I want to be on your podcast and talk about sustainability.
Yeah.
But you have, and I love that your sustainable practices aren't like these big, I'd love for people to do these big grand gestures, but it doesn't have to be these big grand things. But at the same time, it helps you to feel more sustainable. And it also, it lessens your impact on the earth. And so if you want to tell us about, anything that you're doing, because I know that the one was like making your own broth, which is not, it's not small potatoes, because are you vegetarian or are you vegan?
Well, at home, I'm often vegan,
Okay.
but when I'm out or at friends' houses, I often switch to vegetarian because it's easier for people that eat conventionally to prepare vegetarian food. And so
Sure.
I'm comfortable doing that. And that's a choice that I make. It's not about them. It's just about me. Um, giving them grace and then me grace too, because I found that when I was really strictly vegan, I was declining social invitations
Hmm.
because I didn't know how to do the food. And I know that there's a lot of vegan people out there that are expert at just making it happen across all realms. And I would say 95% of the time I'm vegan and 5% of the time I'm vegetarian. And if it's a choice between eating iceberg lettuce or fish, I will eat fish also, in a pinch. I've eaten fish a few times over the last 7 years. But it's really plant-based, plant forward, plant focused. And that's one way that I am living sustainably, is because there's a lot of research around the greenhouse gases that are produced by our animal manufacturing processes. And I am an animal lover. And so, yes, it's the environment. Yes, it's the greenhouse gases. Yes, it's sustainability. And it's also humane. Um, and so I just make that choice for myself. I don't judge anybody who doesn't eat this way, because we all have to do what's right for us. And we all have our own bodies and our own physical needs. And I believe that there are people who really do need to eat meat to be of optimal health. And so I don't have any judgment towards it. But for me, that's one of the biggest ways that I or that I contribute to sustainability, just trying to lower my footprint by eating more plants. And that feels really good. And so I love to do things in a frugal way, almost as a challenge. Like, it brings me joy. I am all about spending money. I will go stay at the Hotel Bel Air. I love it. I love that kind of luxury. And if I can save $4 on a carton of broth by making my own broth, I am going to do it. And so it's a little bit about that. And then it's also about nutrition for me. I love knowing where my food comes from. And I love knowing that it's as whole as it can be and as unaltered as it can be. And I think that's both for nutrition and sustainability. And so one of the things that I love to do, and I know this might make me weird, I love to chop vegetables. Like, it is soothing to me to be in there slicing up an onion and dicing it and slicing up the carrots and the celery. And like, it just brings me joy. I love it.
Even the
Um,
onions that make you cry?
oh, here's a tip. If you chew gum while you are cutting onions, it disrupts that olfactory response and you won't
No.
tear as much. Yes. So try it next time. Just chew a stick of gum while you're cutting the onions and you won't
Oh
cry.
my gosh. I was just doing that today. I'm like, this is so miserable. But I do enjoy, except for the onions, because I'm crying and then I'm afraid I'm going to cut my finger because I can't see what I'm
Because you
doing. So
can't
I'm
see, because
crying.
oh yeah, it's real. And so when I don't have the gum, then I'm in the same boat with, I'm crying. But the piece of gum will do that.
Oh.
So when I'm chopping the vegetables, that's joyful. And then I was realizing how much of the vegetable I was throwing away. Like, the whole base of the celery gets thrown in the garbage, and the whole ends of the onion gets thrown in the garbage, and the tips of the carrots and all the carrot peels and all those seeds of the peppers. And I was like, this is really a lot of waste. What if I just started throwing it in the freezer?
Hmm.
And so then I had a friend who was like, guess what? I'm making my own broth. And I was like, say more, tell me how. And so she was telling me how she does it, and she does it very similarly. And so I started just saving all the ends of my vegetables in a big gallon sized silicone bag in my freezer. And when the bag is full, it's time to make the broth. And so I will say that there are some vegetables that do not broth well. Like, for example, Broccoli has a very distinctive flavor.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not going to make broccoli soup, you may not want broccoli in your broth because it will take on the flavor of the broccoli. And red beets, like the peels of the beets, make it a beautiful, beautiful, rich hue. That's really fun to make sure you have some beets in there. The ends of the potatoes make it just a little bit thicker than it would be if you just had like the onion and the pepper and the carrot. And so I always like to have some potato in there as well. And I'm very cautious with herbs because not all herbs broth well. Like, for example, cilantro has a very distinct flavor, and it may not go well with the other flavors that you are cooking. So I don't use any of the cilantro ends, but I do use like parsley or thyme or oregano because those are in the things that I cook often. And so if I've got the ends of those, I'll throw them in. And I'm trying to think.
I totally do that.
Do you?
I have a bag in my freezer for sure.
I love it. I love it. And then you're saving so much because you don't have to, I mean, it's $4 a carton, $4 for every 4 cups. So if I make a stock pot full of broth, that is like $16 that I saved by making my house smell really good while the broth cooked.
And you're creating less waste.
And I'm creating less waste. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that broth literally cost you nothing because you are using those vegetables for something else. It's genius. I mean, it just makes so much sense. Good. Yeah. And I know there's so many like broth that you would purchase has like sodium, or I don't even know what else is in it because I haven't bought broth in so many years, but it has a lot of sodium, and I usually don't put sodium in. I don't usually put salt in anything. I let people choose their own.
I do too.
But I mean, just like you were saying, like you know exactly what's going in there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, also celery. I mean, if you have a green thumb at all, that end of the celery you can put in the ground and let it regrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you juice, you can use the pulp from your juicer as also in the broth. I don't use strong flavors like turmeric or ginger in the broth, simply because they're so specific that if I wasn't sure I was going to be making the broth, you know, that match those flavors, it might be off-putting. But if I'm making like celery juice or green juice or something with spinach, I'll just throw all that pureed stuff into the broth, and then it gives it a little bit more body too.
Mm-hmm. Right, because that will strain through much better than the whole pieces. Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very cool. Oh, I love that. And is that, I think it's like a grandparent generation thing. Like, I think that the grandmothers I feel like somebody was telling me that their grandmother had a bag in their freezer or they put a jar full of veggie scraps. Maybe my grandmother did, but I feel like I've heard it. My grandmother
had one of those refrigerators that when the door opened, you pulled the handle and the handle kind of moved. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
You pull it and the handle moved. And then when you opened it, there was this little tiny square that was about 8 by 12. And that was the freezer. And so I'm certain there weren't any veggie scraps in the freezer, but I do feel like they saved the veggie scraps. And then I think they put them in the garden.
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right. So you make your own broth, but you are an upcycler. So I want to hear more about that.
So upcycling is I guess it's the more polite term for saying finding a new use for things. So, you know, if I can use something that someone else has used, I just feel like I'm doing the environment a favor. You know, there's a lot of research around clothing, around the waste that is produced with clothing. Mm-hmm. And so I don't mind using hand-me-downs. I don't only do hand-me-downs, but I am not opposed to it at all. And if I can find something in a vintage shop or in a consignment store, I'm all about it. And then if I do buy pieces new, which I do buy pieces new, I buy high quality so that I'm not buying tons and tons of clothes that will wear out. And I think that is, you know, there's lots of different philosophies on that, but mine is spend a little bit more and buy fewer things.
Right. That's genius. I mean, it's just so, I think people have a mindset of like, but I can't afford that right now. But can you really afford to keep throwing clothes away
Right.
or throwing things away?
Right. Well, when I was in my 20s, I had a quantity over quality mindset. And so I wanted more things, more shoes, more clothes, and I was willing to pay really little amounts of money in order to get those things. Like, you know, those shoe stores where you can buy, at least in the 80s and 90s, like $20
Like
for
pay
a
less
pair of
shoes.
Exactly. Exactly. And what I found was those shoes almost never lasted a full year. Almost never. And the minute at the time, it was a lot of money that I bought a $60 pair of shoes. And I was like, oh my gosh, this feels like it's so much money. And that pair of shoes lasted for like 6 years.
Right.
So you don't have to be great at math to know that the 15 pairs of shoes for $20 that only last 9 months or a year, or one good rain, you know, it's a great way to save. And then I'm okay with vintage furniture, and I love furniture consignment shops because I find original pieces that you just can't find other places. And so I like to mix those kinds of things in as decorative items because there's just so much story there.
Right.
And I love the story element of upcycling.
Do you make up stories?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
This couch, I think, came from so and so. Yeah. I mean, I think I love that stuff like that has character. And it's also, you know, they're not all built exactly the same, but they're built better than what you can get these days a lot of the time. I mean, so many of the furniture places are like mass produced, and they're just, you know, they're done overseas where people are paid less and
Right.
blah, 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 that whole thing.
And so I'm, you know, for me, I'm really cautious if I buy new that I'm buying a sustainable kind of wood that is done with fair trade and in ecologically sound ways. And so I pay a little bit more for furniture to make sure that those things are true, because I just feel like we vote with our dollars.
Absolutely.
And so I'm really mindful of that. So like the formaldehyde filled particle board, I personally choose not to have in my home because I feel like I don't want it off gassing, for one. And for two, I don't want to contribute to that industry, which is, it produces a tremendous amount of waste.
Absolutely. So then what type of things are you upcycling? Or do you like make things? Because I'll say I had you in mind when this happened yesterday. I got a new pair of socks, and they were cheap socks, and my toe busted through, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't keep these socks. But I also buy cheap jeans because my fat thighs bust through them all the time. And I was like, what if I cut these socks and I use the socks to cover up that hole in the jeans?
Oh my gosh, I do stuff like that all the time. And in my current place, I'm doing less of it because I'm not quite like unpacked. I don't feel at home here. But in my house, when I was living in Boise, Idaho, I upcycled all kinds of stuff, and I was teaching full time, teaching elementary music at the time. And a lot of times I would upcycle things into the classroom. So like, for example, coffee tins or oatmeal cans were great instruments, or you could make crafts or projects for kids. And so a lot of the things that would typically be thrown away, you can actually make new things out of. And, you know, at one point I was making all my own canisters out of like decorating the things. And so when I have time and mental space, I love to create. I'm a very creative person, and that's just sort of how I like to spend my time, is just doing stuff and making stuff. And so I love to just kind of look at all the things around and be like, how can I combine this thing into the thing that I need? So like a broken pot became a pot, I mean like a flower pot.
Mhm.
We painted little pieces of it and made it into frog homes and put it all over the yard so that the little frogs could live under there.
Oh my
And so that was
gosh.
one example of something fun that
That's
we had
sweet.
done. It was fun. I don't know if they ever lived there or not, but we did have frogs and they did have homes. Whether the two ever went together, not sure.
I totally missed that you were a music teacher. Is that what you were doing until this year?
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my
I
gosh.
was in the music classroom for 26 years. I taught choral and vocal music and elementary
For
music.
real.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I did not know that, but I love you so much more now.
Well,
I was
good.
in choir until like 10 years ago, like for
Oh,
my entire life. I just love choral singing.
me too. There's so much community that happens in a choir, and that shared experience of making music together is just so unique and so special.
Yay. Uh, yay. Okay. So, did you have other things that you wanted that you were I know those were the things that you had told me about ahead of time, but were there other
Yeah.
things that you had thought about?
We actually, yeah, I decided a few years ago that I was done buying laundry detergent in the big plastic jugs.
Mhm.
And so I started to look for more sustainable things, and I found a recipe for homemade laundry detergent. And I will tell you that there's a lot of articles out there that say you should not use homemade laundry detergent. And so I'm just going to say, do so at your own risk. I personally have not had any problems with it, and I will continue to
Right.
do so.
Is that
But
because it like gums up your washing machine? I think I read those too.
I'm not exactly sure because I had already made the decision I was still going to do it. But I just wanted to say to your listeners, like, just do your own due diligence and make sure you're comfortable. But so I use a combination of baking soda and washing soda, Epsom salt, sea salt, and essential oils. And that's it. And I've done it for like 6 years. And my clothes last a really long time. They're really soft. They always smell good. My personal favorite is lavender. You could use literally any essential oil that you wanted
Oh
to
my
use.
gosh.
And one of the benefits of lavender is, and if you add a little eucalyptus to it, is that if you have kids in public schools, it's lice repellent.
Oh.
And that is important if you have kids in public schools because,
Life
sometimes
happens.
life happens. And so that was another reason why I had decided to start adding that in, because it just seemed like it felt protective, and then it smells really good.
And it smells yummy. Yeah, absolutely.
And then I
So
just store it in mason jars.
cool. That's awesome. I really like that. And so it's a powder because it's all
Mm-hmm.
powders. Would
Yeah.
you send that to me? That's really cool.
Yes.
I've
Yes. I'll send
tried
it to you. I've got it on a picture somewhere on my phone.
cool. I've tried some. I've tried one. And I'm on the lookout. I we have a refill store that just came into my town and they have like liquid laundry soap that you can just bring your own old jars and fill them, which that's what I'm doing right now because
That's
it's
cool.
better than I can do. But I tried the one that's like it's like mom's favorite laundry sauce or something like that. But it's like the 𝗙𝗶𝗲𝗀𝗃 bar and the washing soda and there's borax, I think. But you have to grate the 𝗙𝗃𝗀𝗃 bar and it just smelled it was so strong. I had to I gave it away because I just couldn't. There was no way I could use
Mm,
it. But I don't
I
know
saw
why
those
that.
recipes and I
Huh.
didn't know what some of the ingredients were or where to get them. So I chose one deliberately that didn't have borax or the other thing that you just said because I was like,
Mhm.
I don't know where to get those.
Mhm.
And I don't know what they are, and I wanted something really gentle.
Right.
And I know that there's some, like, I tried to make my own dishwasher detergent and that did not go as well.
Okay.
It was supposed to be stored into little ice cube trays, and then you would dry it out and then you'd use it in the dishwasher. And what I found was it dried into all one clump. And so I don't have that figured out yet, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I've totally, like, I had one, I made one that was for like toilet fizzies, and it was similar to with the baking soda and essential oils and hydrogen peroxide and something else, and they're okay.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah. I mean, I'm on the hunt for the best like cleaning recipes, because right now for cleaning I use like a mixture of vinegar and water, and it's not awesome for cleaning. I mean, if we were very clean people, didn't have pets, didn't have a boy, that works outside all day,
Yeah.
I think it would not be so bad. But he's very dirty, and I can't keep up with that. I have a business and I have a podcast and I'm working full time. Like, I don't have time to clean up after everything every other week. But
Especially if the fluid doesn't actually do the cleaning.
Right. Right. I mean, if I could do it every week and just keep it up, then that would be cool, but I can't. But like I've been on the search for a good laundry detergent, laundry soap, and you know, all the cleaners, like my own hand soap, my own dish soap, stuff like that. Like I want to make my own cleaners, and people say it's not that hard, but there are so many recipes that it's hard to know like where to start. I'm working with a local farmer. We're going to try to put together a soap making workshop in the next month. I know, it's very exciting. So I want to learn how to make soap so bad. Like, I can't believe how much money we spent on soap, and it's still, and like, we just keep doing it. But so yeah, I'm excited for that laundry soap one. And we'll have to chat other recipes.
Yeah, it's really simple. And I want to say it's like, I don't know. I don't want to tell you the wrong things, but it's super simple, and you just put it in a food processor, grind it into a really fine powder. And for us, well, I live alone right now. My daughter moved out just a couple of months ago. And so I guess I should say for me, it lasts probably 6 months. One
batch.
And I just use a tablespoon or two, depending on the amount of clothes I'm throwing in there. And it seems like it does the trick.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool. So, I mean, I think it's probably pretty clear the answer to this question, Brenda, but when I say the word sustainability, what does that mean to you?
Well, I think it means two things. One thing is, can I sustain this practice? Can I continue to do this thing? Is it sustainable? That's one meaning. In other words, can I incorporate this into my life in a way that feels manageable? So that's one way of sustainability. And then I think the other sustainability would be, is this sustainable for our earth to continue to bear the burden of? And am I living in a way that is protecting our planet and protecting our water, protecting our mountains, our oceans, and our future? And so when I think about that way of sustainability and then marrying it with the way that is sustainable for me and my lifestyle, then I can make small choices that make a big impact. Like, for example, making broth may not seem like that big of an impact, but if you consider one freezer gallon size bag saves 4 cartons.
And those cartons aren't recyclable or compostable.
Right.
They're just trash.
And then I think there's other little subtle ways, you know, the choice in what you choose to drive is really personal. And I'm not going to tell anybody what you should or shouldn't be driving. I am really aware, because I drive a hybrid that tracks all of my mileage. And so I'm super nerdy about it. I'm like, oh, did I get as good a gas mileage this time as last time? And so understanding that how you drive has as much impact on your fuel use as what you drive. And so just paying attention to, are you, depressing the gas pedal all the way, like vroom, right out of the gate, because you're using a lot more fuel. And so thinking about that type of sustainability. And then I'm always asking the question, like, how can I make this better? Every time I go to the beach, I pick up at least 5 pieces of trash a day. Just like as I'm walking along the beach, just trying to make it better. And I think there's a lot of ways that we can do things that feel manageable, that feel doable. And imagine if everybody just did 1 or 2 little things, what would happen?
100%. Absolutely. That's beautiful. I mean, that's like, I can end the podcast right now. That's my whole goal. Like, we don't have to be doing everything, but if everyone does something, we're all working toward that. We're all on the same team, man.
We are all on the same team. And I think it comes back to habit stacking. If you tried to do even everything that we've talked about on this podcast, it might be overwhelming. But if you tried to do one thing and then you really learned it well, and then added the next thing after you've learned one thing really well, it might be more sustainable.
Right. Because that first thing is going to be like breathing after a little bit. Making your broth is like nothing. It's in the freezer. You just put it in with some water and cook it and then put it in jars.
Yeah.
That's it. It's nothing. And then you can pick something else up. Brenda, I've loved this. This is so fun. I love getting to know you better. I feel so connected with you. But so how can people find or follow you to learn more about your podcast? Or you also have an empowerment coaching business.
Yeah.
You're an energy healer. These are all things that people might want to learn about. So
yeah, I think that we are at a time when stress is at an all-time high. And my business model is all about, let's not have you do one more thing or be challenged or try to improve yourself. Let's do one thing. And that is, let's help everybody feel better. That's my business model. Let's make people feel better. And so the hub for everything is under my website, which is BrendaWinkle.com. And you can access everything there. The podcast is Waves of Joy Podcast. It's available wherever you get your podcasts, especially on Apple and Spotify and Google and Amazon and Audible. And then it seems like it's being picked up on other podcast platforms as well, too. So that's kind of fun. And I'm on Instagram at Brenda Winkle. That's where I'm probably most active. And I'm on Facebook at Brenda Winkle 111. On TikTok, I'm just starting over on TikTok. I've just passed 100 followers, and I'm like, yay, this is so exciting. So I'm over there at Brenda Winkle 111. And I do have a really fun free event coming up in January. I feel like none of us need more challenges. And so this is not a challenge. This is a journey. It's called Yes to Me. It's 5 days beginning January 4th through 7th. And we'll meet at 5 p.m. Pacific, which is 6 Mountain, 7 Central, 8 Eastern.
Good job.
Thank you. We'll meet for 4 days, 3 days, the 4th, 5th, and 6th at that time. And then the 7th, we'll meet at 9 a.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. or 10 a.m. Mountain, 11 Central, 12 Eastern. And it's called Yes to Me. We all give so much of the time that sometimes we over yes to everyone around us. And we don't have any yes left for us, for the things that we want to do and the things that would make us feel better. And so this journey is really rooted in the idea that we can all find ways to say yes to ourselves more authentically. And it can be really easy and really simple.
I like that. I joined.
I'm so glad. I can't wait to see you in there.
I'm psyched.
Me too.
We can all use a little bit more yes to ourselves, for sure.
I think so. And so that's on the website. It's right on the home banner. But if you want to go directly, it's BrendaWinkle.com/yes to me, YESTOME.
Ooh, that's a lot. You're everywhere, man. That's awesome. And so for your energy healing, Brenda, you do Reiki?
Yeah, I'm a Reiki master. I'm trained as an advanced theta healing practitioner, and I have a couple other modalities. And I'm currently enrolled in a trauma-informed breathwork facilitator program. And I begin my practicum on January 23rd. And so I'm going to be looking for people who want to breathe in a breathwork session for free. while I need to get 60 hours of practice.
60
And so
hours.
if people are interested in a breathwork session, they can connect with me over on Instagram or anywhere, any of the places, and I'll send a calendar link and they can have a free breathwork session.
Awesome. That's very cool. Wow. It's a good thing. It's a good thing this is your full-time gig, because
I
that's,
know,
you
right?
have so many things. Lots of irons on the fire, man.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Brenda, thank you. Thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure. And it's the first time, clearly it's the first time I've spoken with you, but I don't know that I've ever seen your face like talking, other than on Instagram. I see you on Instagram all the time, of course, but just talking to each other, I
I've
don't think so.
really enjoyed this, Amy. Thank you so much. I feel that connection that you spoke about. It's very cool.
Yay. Awesome. Well, thank you, thank you. Well, and if you could send that your laundry soap recipe, I'll just share that. I mean, if you
Yeah.
have it as a picture on your phone, I can
Yeah,
just
it's not
share it.
even mine. I mean, I found it on the internet. So I will send the picture over and give credit to whoever I found it from.
Cool. Awesome. All right. I'm gonna stop it.